Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in this woman, in the bonds of holy matrimony. Does anyone here today have any reason these two should not be joined together? Speak now or forever hold your peace. We've often heard these words. And when we look at the words of Jesus in the Bible, and when it comes to the Sermon on the Mount, let's look at what Jesus said. We talked a little bit about pornography last week. Look at something else. He says, you heard it said, a man can divorce his wife for merely giving her a written notice of divorce. But I say that a man who divorces his wife, unless she has been unfaithful, causes her to commit adultery. And anyone who marries a divorced woman also commits adultery. Now, when Jesus says man here, the truth is for both men and women, because they both stand before the minister and they both make the pledge to love each other as long as they both shall live. We understand the Bible gives consideration for those people who are in a relationship where the spouse is abusive or has been cheating on the person. But God's ultimate goal for marriage was for it to be a permanent situation. In Jesus' day, men could just give their women, and it was very much that. Men give it unto the women for any reason they liked. But Jesus was pointing out here that they were not supposed to look at women or their spouse as just an object for their own pleasure, for their own amusement, for whatever they wanted. Jesus made it clear that unless they had a biblical reason, they were committing adultery. Now, I'm not going to get into today about the fine line between somebody who's been married before and divorced before and what's the remarriage has to do with it. I want to go with where we're at for the person who's married or the person who's thinking about getting married. God's plan is for it to be forever. You say, well, we don't love each other anymore. Somebody told me a long time ago, love is a choice. And you could choose to love each other and choose to work it out. Now, the problem is, do some people want to work it out? No, it's not. They don't always want to work it out. They choose to be unfaithful. They choose to do things that are wrong. And for that person, I think the Bible is very clear, you're innocent. But God is making it very clear, I think Jesus is making it very clear here, that for a person in a the goal is for permanence. In fact, Jesus' words here weren't just, if you do this, you're committing adultery. If you're getting unscriptural divorce, you're committing adultery by going out. But you're causing the other person to do it. And that's always the thing we fail to think about. The consequences of a person's choices and how they affect someone else. What happens to them? Again, there are a lot of details here, a lot of things we can talk about, and there are a lot of arguments over these things. And somebody doesn't have to disagree with me, but I will point this out. Jesus is making it very clear that marriage is something that's supposed to be permanent, something that's supposed to endure. Are there causes? Yes, Jesus made it very clear, unless there's, for some reason, for adultery. But other than that, we are supposed to be committed to work it out. And if we refuse to do that, our actions not just affect us, but they affect everyone else. They affect the people around us. The husband or the wife who comes to their spouse and say, you know what, I just don't feel it anymore. I'm going to let you go. No, you're not letting them go. You're throwing them away. Now, again, I want to make it clear. I'm not talking about those people who have grounds. There have been in abusive relationships, because I believe the Bible says, Paul made it very clear, that if a man's willing to live with a wife, that's fine, peaceably, and that's the interesting word there, then she is okay. But if not, then she is free. Bible does make it very clear, I believe, some do argue, but I don't think they have grounds for it, that even with adultery, you shouldn't get divorced. But the Bible makes it very clear, yes, you have grounds. But what God wants is something that has permanence. And again, God isn't looking at the other, isn't in the Sermon on the Mount, isn't looking at the other person. What are they doing? What are they doing? But Jesus is saying, you. If you are doing this, then you are responsible. And you are causing other people to sin also. You say, how does it cause other people to sin? You have to realize, especially in the culture of Jesus' day, a woman who didn't have a husband didn't have a lot of places to go. If she wanted to be able to survive any type of lifestyle that's safe, she needed to have a husband. Now, I'm not arguing the morality of how that was and how, personally, I don't think it was a good thing. But, so for her safety and safety of her future, she had to find someone. If her husband had just thrown her aside, then according to the strictest definition, he was causing her to sin. And here's the thing about it. I don't think, this is St. Charles. St. Charles, when I say that, that means it's my idea, not necessarily what God thinks. But I think I've got the right idea here. Jesus is pointing out here that, yeah, they may be doing something not right, but it's on you. It's on you. So the husband who threw the wife out and she has no place to go and she finds a person who cares for her and loves her and she marries him. If she's done everything she can, the sin's not on her. The sin is on him. Now, when I look at this, especially in light of the scriptures we talked about last week, about how a man should not look at a woman to lust after her, and now a man shouldn't just divorce a woman. And again, I'm saying, when I say man, that was a predominantly men-dominated culture, so the men had more of the power. Today, especially in the West, women have just as much power in a lot of areas as the men do. So they can say, oh, you're done. I'm throwing you out. I don't care what you want. But Jesus is making it clear, I think, that when you're dealing with a relationship, a spousal relationship, or your relationship with the opposite sex, one, you don't look at them as something to give you pleasure. And two, when you decide, well, I've used them for whatever one I wanted from, I'm tired of them, you do not have the authority just to throw them out. In other words, Jesus is saying that the relationship between people is something that's on you. You can't say, well, hey, I'm just looking, I'm not touching. No, you're thinking wrong. You're on the wrong path. You're looking at people wrong. If you think, oh, I can just get rid of my spouse, then you're treating that spouse not as a person, but as a thing. And Jesus is making very clear, human beings are worth more. Jesus, in a very real sense, is saying, you think, oh, I haven't actually committed adultery. I've just looked and thought about it. Well, I follow the rules. I got a legal divorce, so I'm free. I can do whatever I want now. No. Jesus is saying you're accountable to God for for how you treat the people around you. And when it comes to people of the opposite sex and that desire that we have for one another, it's supposed to remain pure, and it's supposed to be in a committed, monogamous relationship. Is it easy? No. Are there things that sometimes happen that cause it to break up? Yes. I had the unfortunate circumstance of having to look at a woman because I knew information that they did. And they said, he wants a divorce. What can I do? And I had to look at her and say, let him get it. You have grounds. There were a lot of stuff going on that I can't get into on Facebook. But that broke my heart. Did that woman want that? No, she didn't. She wanted to do things God's way. So there are those things out there. But I'm not looking at the possible exceptions. I'm looking at what Jesus is saying we're supposed to treat other people like. And the commitment we need to have with one another. And when it comes to marriage, Jesus is very clear in here and in other places that a man and a wife are designed to be together forever. God's plan before the fall was for man and woman to come together and be husband and wife, one flesh as it were, forever. Again, the problem, I think, is people are looking for excuses to justify bad behavior. The problem is we have a guideline we need to be shooting for. And we need to be striving for that. If something forces you off the road, use a drug, you can't do anything about that. But when you're driving, you have to make sure you keep your eyes where they need to be. And when it comes to other people, we need to think of them in the right way. Our spouse is supposed to be our partner, our person there with us, that we're supposed to love and cherish for as long as we both shall live, in sickness and in health. Again, does this always take place? No, it doesn't. But if we have our eyes on that goal, it can happen in far greater frequency than it does. Jesus' call for us is to live a higher life, a better life. And that doesn't just dealing with other people. It also deals with how we deal with people at home in our lives. One other thing. For those who say pornography doesn't hurt anybody. Well, if Jesus says it was cheating, then you're going down a path that cheats on your spouse. That's hard. That's harsh. Now, do people struggle with this stuff? Yes. And they fight with it? Yes. And it's But our goal in our Christian life should be to live like Jesus wants to. And that means treating our spouse, our families, in the right way. They're not disposable. When we stand there in front of the pastor and they say, does anyone here have any reason? Hopefully nobody said anything. But I think the problem is some of the people who were standing there, the couples, had something in their heart that had a reason. And their reason was, well, if this doesn't work, I'll quit. And if that's your reason, if that's your thought, when you're at that altar, then you should say, I have a reason. My reason is my heart isn't right. It's heavy stuff. We are in a culture that likes to look at the loopholes and the reasons it's okay. And I don't want to put guilt on those who don't deserve it. But I also can't make light of what Jesus said is sin. So what do we need to do? If you're not married, make sure you find the right person before you get married and that you're willing to commit to it forever. Can you make mistakes? Yes, people do. But go into it with a commitment. I'm going to stick with this till the end, till death do us part. If you're married, make a decision. I'm going to love my spouse. Not go looking other places. Not comparing them with somebody else because they're not someone else. And I'm going to do my best to stay on the road. If somebody knocks you off, hey, you can't do nothing about that. But your job in your married life is to drive down that road the way you're supposed to. Keep thinking about that. And don't give up hope. A bit of good news. We've heard the phrase that 50% of the marriages end in divorce. There's a misnomer about that. Some of those 50% marriages are people on the second, third, fourth, and fifth marriage. So the number of people who are married for the first time and are stay married is much higher than you realize. God bless you. Have a good day.